Hello everyone and welcome to the Farmer Files. I only have 15 minutes and this episode is a little bit longer. I just went through recording it and found out the recording was 17 minutes long, so I have to redo it. So we're going to be going a little bit quicker, hoping that I can beat the clock on this. So hello everyone, welcome to this latest episode of the Farmer Files. This is the second part of our special on La Llorona. As with the previous episode, I will warn the viewer that some of the content in this video may be disturbing. We will be looking at the origins of the La Llorona myth, as a result discussing Aztec religion and the Santa Muerte religion, both of which have deep ties to the La Llorona myth. This means that some of the topics we will be discussing are going to be disturbing to some viewers. Topics revolve around death in general, human sacrifice, infanticide, cannibalism, demonic possession, and other highly unsavory topics which would be unsuitable for delicate or young viewers. For this reason, I have put an age restriction on the video, and I ask you to please respect that. As a side note, I have some tough pronunciation ahead of me in this video, especially when talking fast. So while I try to keep our videos professional, I might be stumbling through some of these names, so please bear with me. The origins of the La Llorona myth are uncertain, but represents a repeating motif found in multiple aspects of Hispanic, especially Mexican Hispanic, culture. This motif can be found across Mexican culture, from the Dia de Muertos, Day of the Dead traditions, to the rebounding Santa Muerte religion. Some historians believe that these traditions all stem from the same origins, resulting from the assimilation of pagan beliefs by the Catholic Church. This absorption is not uncommon across Catholic Christianity and other Christian denominations. Throughout its history, the Church has absorbed numerous pagan beliefs in order to lure different cultures into the Church. The holiday of Easter was a result, for example, of the absorption of a pagan fertility goddess in order to appease the new cultures being absorbed into Christianity. That pagan fertility goddess was by the name of Ishtar. And you may have noticed that eggs and rabbits, both of which are signs of Easter, are major fertility symbols. And really, they don't have anything to do with Resurrection Day. The new cultures that the church was attempting to absorb were only too happy to celebrate Resurrection Day when it incorporated traditions they were already familiar with. The Dia de Muertos tradition is notoriously derived from the Aztec worship of the Queen of the Dead, Mictlantecuhtli, and a yearly festival celebrating her return to the world of the living, in order to ensure that the living were giving proper respect to the dead ancestors. Offers of food and marigold flowers are offered to Mictlantecuhtli and the ancestors, while skulls of the ancestors are painted and put on display as sugar skulls to prove the living reverence of the dead. Mictlantecuhtli and her husband Mictlantecuhtli, I said her name wrong that entire time, it's Mictlantecuhtli, and he is Mictlantecuhtli, are represented by the Catrin and Katrina, the latter looking eerily similar to the descriptions given of La Llorona. Santa Muerte has become increasingly common among Dia de Muertos celebrations as well, unsurprising given she is the saint of death. Altars decorated with flowers, sodas, candies, cigarettes, and paraphernalia, and presided over by a veiled and robed female skeleton, have become prominent in the last 10 years at these celebrations. It is also common for young girls to dress up as La Llorona during the celebration, and it is difficult to tell the difference between the La Llorona and Katrina caricatures, as shown on screen. The one to the left is a young lady admittedly dressed as La Llorona, retrieved from an article by Amy Fuller. The young lady on the right is dressed as a Katrina. It is incredibly difficult to tell any difference between the two. Also compare this to the depictions of Santa Muerte. The differences are minuscule at best. Santa Muerte generally bears a scythe or sacrificial blade. This is the only real difference easily visible. There are two other Aztec goddesses which have been put forth as theories behind La Llorona figure as well, Quetzalcoatl and Chalchiuhtlicue, according to Amy Fuller's article from History Today. Quetzalcoatl. According to the article, Quetzalcoatl, or Snake Woman, has been described as a savage beast wearing a cobra-like hood. an evil omen, and a figure in white that would walk the streets at night, weeping, wailing, and gnashing her teeth. The article fails to mention what she was believed to be the goddess of, however does highlight some ties between her and the evil omens, which were seen before the arrival of the conquistadors in Mexico by Montezuma. According to the British Museum, Ciacuatl was one of many Aztec motherhood or fertility deities. She is described sometimes as a young woman, but most often as an old woman with the face of a skeleton. She carries the spears and shield of a warrior, and women are encouraged to cry out to her for assistance in labor. However, it appears that there is some dispute concerning her identity. The University of Oregon describes her in a completely different manner. Ciacuatl was considered an earth deity according to a Nahuatl dictionary from the University of Oregon. She was dressed in a long white gown with braided hair that formed two horns on the top of her head. This is not the only similarity with La Llorona. Before the conquest, she reportedly walked up and down the streets, weeping and wailing for her children, the Aztecs. The University of Oregon also goes on to document Ciacuatl in several codices and scholarly writings. The codices are a subject of intense interest. The description of her above was as reported in the Florentine Codex, which also states that she would dust herself with white chalk and wore a headdress of eagle feathers, a cape, and carried a turquoise weaving stick. Friar Bernardino de Sahaguan also reported that she was a foreboding figure who symbolized war and would paint her face half red and half black when war was soon to come upon the land. Interestingly, however, in Book 8 of Sahaguan's Florentine Codex, he labels Ciacuatl a demon and a cannibal. Quote, "In this time it came to pass that the demon Ciacuatl ate a small boy as he lay in his cradle." Unquote. This is certainly not comforting, given that mothers were supposed to cry out to Ciacuatl for protection for them and the baby during labor. I don't think I would be crying out to her. This is not the only link to cannibalism that can be found to Ciacuatl. Dr. K. Reed, Professor Emeritus from the Department of Religious Studies of DePaul University, calls the goddess voracious, and reports that weekly sacrifices of war prisoners were made to her. Once a still-beating heart had been removed and sacrificed, the body was then returned to its family to be eaten. It is also believed that she was considered what today is called a vampire. The white chalk mentioned previously is prevalent with cannibalistic and blood-drawing deities throughout Aztec cultures. Corroborating de Sahaguan's report of her cannibalistic infanticide, many report that if there were no prisoners of war to be sacrificed to her, she would leave an empty cradle board and an obsidian sacrificial knife by a public watering hole well used. If there continued to be no sacrifice made to her after this, she would begin abducting and consuming newborns instead of protecting them. Interestingly, it is reported that Ciacuatl was not originally part of the Aztec pantheon. When the Aztecs were led into the Mexico area, they found that Ciacuatl had lived there for generations and adopted her into their own religion, Chalchiuhtlicue. Like Ciacuatl, Chalchiuhtlicue was also seen as a protector of mothers and newborns. However, she was actually classified as a divine of water. She was considered to be an incredibly emotional divine, and when she was ruling the world, it is said that she was accused of taking advantage of mankind. She was so hurt by this accusation that she began to cry and was unable to stop being a water goddess. So she cried until she had shed every drop of water that had ever been made. This took 52 years and created a flood that covered the entire face of the earth. Every living thing on the earth perished except for the humans, which she had turned into fish to spare them. She is now said to rule over a special world of the dead, devoted to those who die watery deaths, as well as to mothers who die in labor. In modern version of the mythos, La Llorona is considered to be an aspect of Chalchiuhtlicue, and even to rule alongside her in the watery death realm. Another version of the Chalchiuhtlicue myth states that rather than being the benign but overly emotional individual she is depicted as above, but she destroyed the earth intentionally in order to destroy sinners. When the innocent Mexica cried out to her for mercy, she then turned them into the fish and brought them into her world of the dead. Chalchiuhtlicue was not immune, however, from the cannibalistic nature of the Aztec religion. She was the subject of major festivals that featured cannibalism. During the month-long ceremonies of Alihualo, children were brought up to the mountaintops to be sacrificed to Chalchiuhtlicue, and her husband, brother, and son, Tlaloc, the rain god. The leftover bodies would then be eaten in a communal feast. During dry spells, young girls would also be drowned in lakes Texcoco that surrounded Teotihuacan to Chalchiuhtlicue. The ceremonial tomb in Teotihuacan, discovered by Sabioro Sugimaya, is believed by some to have been devoted to Chalchiuhtlicue. It contained, among other things, a young adult male bound and sacrificed, 2 jaguars, 8 hawks or falcons, and over 150 ceremonial objects. Many believe that the La Llorona of today is a result of the Christianization of Mexican culture, as a way of clinging to old traditions while still adhering to the Christian faith, basically no longer calling the beings gods, but still acknowledging their assistance. In some cases, such as La Llorona, this is fearful. In others, such as Santa Muerte, they still worship those creatures. And I call them creatures quite intentionally. Many Santa Muerte members also consider themselves to be devout Catholics. There is, however, another postulation that can be made. That is that these beings, once considered as divine, were very real. It is stated, for example, that Quetzalcoatl was a being who dwelled in the Mexica Valley long before the Aztecs arrived. The Christian faith describes demons that may possess an individual, akin to how La Llorona is said to possess new mothers and drive them to madness. Extra-canonical scripture, such as the Book of Enoch, describes how the angels who followed Satan came to the earth in the days of Noah, creating monstrosities and posturing themselves as gods and creators. The New Testament, meanwhile, describes how even Satan can disguise himself as an angel of light. Other religions around the world tell very similar stories. But in addition to this, perhaps the most persuasive evidence is the easily detectable patterns across the globe. Whatever myth you hear of, you can easily find numerous other cultures to corroborate that story. La Llorona is no exception. While I cannot create enough videos to fit a systematic review of all religions and cultures that contain a being similar to La Llorona, the next video will be dedicated to the analysis of the Celtic culture. Separated by times and vast seas, there is no scientific evidence for these cultures ever contacting each other. Yet the connections between the beings described by the Celts and the Hispanics of past and present are surprising. It may even make you think twice about everything you think you knew about the history of our world. I hope you will join us then. As always, to balance the disturbing nature of this video, the end credits will be accompanied by a peaceful scene. I am sorry I had to go through that so quickly. This was a 4-pager, and it didn't want to fit in the 15 minutes that I have, because I have to leave some time for our end credits. Oh, also, we have a deviant artist who is going to be featured in today's video. His name is Ian, I believe Vic. I don't have his name right in front of me. He did 2 beautiful pieces. They will be at the front of our references. Chalchiuhtlicue and Obsidian Butterfly. I want to thank him for allowing me to use those those art pieces in this video. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day. God bless.